and does all sorts of crazy things. But he's a great Don Juan in the sense that it's not that he appreciates women. It's not that he appreciates the spirit that lives in alcohol. He's just bored silly. And the only way that he can walk away from boredom is by using and exploiting other people. One day, Siddhartha runs into Eve, whose name happens to be the Buddha, someone who's awakened, someone who has some insights about life, some understanding about life and what it means to be a human being in the cradle of this miserable thing called life. And as Siddhartha is walking towards a bar to get drunk and hopefully get lucky, he finds this man, the Buddha, giving a sermon, and he finds himself very attracted to what he's hearing, and that's the first thing. Why is he attracted? I mean, what the Buddha says does not appeal to your senses. He says life sucks. Well, you know, sex is fun, drinking is fun, chatting with your friends are fun, watching TV is fun. Why is the Buddha saying life sucks? And why are you attracted to that particular statement? That's all a mystery. And yet you're attracted. For those of you in this class who have ever read the Epic of Gilgamesh, it's a guy created by the gods. He is 2/3 God and 1/3 human. And that's a funny thing, because you would think that the 2/3 God that live inside him has the power to crush all human temptations, but that's not the case. In fact, Gilgamesh becomes intoxicated by the 1/3 meat and completely forgets the 2/3 spirit that lives inside him. That's the first thing you need to know about us. We are physical, lustful, greedy little rats. And despite being greedy little rats, there is this thing inside us that's a mystery, gravitates towards things that punish the rat animals that we are. You know, you're having sex, it's a beautiful thing, you're having fun, pleasure, and then all of a sudden something about you comes out and says, what are you doing? Is it meat? Is it love? Is it spirit? What are you doing? And then you get stuck, you see. And it's this other part of you that all of a sudden comes to life, and you don't really know how or why. So Siddhartha is walking, hears this sermon, and is captivated. Forgets going to the bar, forgets all about the worldly, fleshy, meaty temptations. After 5, 6, 7 hours of listening to the Buddha, he goes to him, Siddhartha goes to him and says, I want to be your student. And that's the other thing you need to understand. The moment you're inspired by something, you begin to worship it. It doesn't matter what inspires you. You worship inspiration. Inspiration brings a soul or spirit. You know, it's like a breath. It's air. But it's a very, very different air. You watch Angelina Jolie, she produces a different kind of a spirit. It's all about sex and beauty, okay? That ultimately gets reduced to sex. But the way the Buddha talks and the way Siddhartha receives the message of the Buddha elevates something completely different. It's not about his meat. It's not about his personal stories. None of those things. And he says, I want to be your student. I want to worship you. That's what basically it means. And for those of you in this class who claim to be atheists, you're not. Because whenever inspiration comes to you, you worship it and you pray for more of it. That's your promised land. That's where you enter your Sabbath. You rest in the inspiration. Okay? Every single day, Siddhartha goes to the Buddha. Every single day. And sits at his feet. It's what they call the Upanishad. You sit at the feet of your teacher. How do you know he's your teacher? Who cares? It's not a logical thing. It's irrational. You know, he goes to the bathroom, he does all sorts of things that you do on a daily basis, and yet there is something you feel about this person that is far different from you. You know. Just to tell you how ridiculous this can be, I remember when the Iraq War took place, you know, you could, on TV, they would show you, you know, these aeroplanes from the West just bombing the hell out of Iraq. And I'm third world, I'm not Iraqi. And Iraqis don't speak Persian, they speak Arabic. But they look like me. And so you have no choice but to be upset and angry. And I remember it was a time where I had to defend my dissertation. And I couldn't do it. I was sitting in the car, I was listening to the radio, and I was hearing all these bombs being dropped. And I said, what the hell am I doing? I'm going to go what? Defend some ridiculous essay for some stupid people I don't really respect? For what? Screw the PhD, I'm out. And I didn't go. And I remember driving from San Francisco to Hussein's shop. And the first thing I asked, can you do something about this? And you think that your teachers have miraculous powers, that somehow like the invisible man, they can go to the White House and they can whisper into the president's ears, that somehow they could leave their bodies and go to Saddam Hussein, or maybe you can plan for some country to send some weapons of mass destruction so they could defend themselves. That's how ridiculous it becomes when you find yourself in the presence of someone you feel to be a teacher. Okay. And I don't mean to say that in a negative way, because teachers are like GPS. You trust your GPS. You know, if I tell you to go to your Google map and just find where Meikade is and get the address, well, you're going to trust it. You're going to get in your car with your girlfriend and you're going to go to San Francisco, find this restaurant and eat some chole kebab and korma sabzi. You're going to trust it. And students trust their teachers, good or bad, doesn't really matter. Now, you could say, well, you know, people had faith in David Koresh. People had faith in Osho. You know, people had faith in Hitler. It's true. You have faith, but you have no idea where this faith will lead you. And you have no idea what time will reveal to you. Okay? But all you know at that moment in time is that you love this person. And what do you do when you love someone? Marry me. And what do you do? I mean, you're poor, you got no money, but you go somewhere and you buy a ring for $25,000. You know, that you put on your credit card, and then you call and say, I didn't make this purchase. My card was stolen. You got to be like that. Now, remember, I teach ethics for those of you who want to know what right conduct and behavior are. I am your man. Now, I will lead you to the promised land, San Quentin. Okay, now. You know, so every day Siddhartha would sit at the feet of his teacher, the Buddha. And that's the other thing you need to understand. When you find someone who is wiser than you, more insightful than you, that's the best kind of humility you will ever experience in your life. You bow yourself, you belittle yourself, you make yourself insignificant and irrelevant. You become like this empty bucket, the very thing that the Taoists talk to us about. That if someone comes to you seeking advice, the first thing you need to ask them is, how empty are you? You want to get rid of the anger you have towards your father. Well, I'm going to sit back and just listen to you talk. Because if every 5 seconds you're going to come out with anger, my father, you're so full of rage, I can't do much. Because you're going to take in my advice or anybody's advice and you're going to twist it. And it's not going to help you at all. If you need something and you want that something to help you, emptiness is the key. If you're still stuck on your ex, you can date 1,000 people. but not a single one you will move forward because your ex has captured you. You haven't gone beyond your ex. So, for those of you in this class who may one day find an inspiration or find a teacher that you're willing to bow to, worship, respect, listen, have a good amount of fear and trembling every time you found yourself in the presence of that thing or person, consider that to be a very, very lucky period in your life. Because once you lose that GPS, you're going to just drive around town and there is no place to go. You know, you keep driving and driving until you realize your gas tank is empty. And now you have no money to fill it up. 10, 15, 20 years pass by. And Siddhartha really assumes that if he goes in there to the Buddha and he keeps listening and paying attention and taking notes, if he sits, he fasts, he meditates, he prays, eventually the wisdom that lives inside the Buddha will be inside him. And that's the other thing you need to know. You don't read the Bible to know God. You read the Bible because you want to be God. You want to have the wisdom of God inside you. If the Bible tells you about marriage and relationships, you keep reading those particular passages until they become part of you. That next time you go out on dates, you know what questions to ask. Okay? So remember, deep down, every student who finds a teacher without really being aware of it, they want to be their own teacher ultimately. They want the wisdom of that teacher to go inside them. They want the reflection of what lives inside that teacher to now be inside them. That's the thing. So the idea of kingdom of God, you know, first he says, look at me and you see God in the Gospel of John. Well, once you've looked at me enough, hopefully the kingdom of God will also reveal itself inside you. And then you will have no need of me. Okay? And then he says, you have to walk through me. But to walk through anything, first you have to see it. Then you have to touch it. And after enough seeing and touching, then you walk through. And then you close the door and you won't turn around. Jesus is dead for you because he now lives inside you. That's what it means to walk through. And that's what Siddhartha believes. That if I hang out with the Buddha enough, if I hang out with Jordan Peterson enough, if I listen to Sadhguru, Eckhart Tolle, or any of those ridiculous people out there, I will be like them. 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years pass by. And one day Siddhartha wakes up and comes to realize he's still stupid. He's no wiser than, the way he was like 15, 20 years ago. And he is upset. He's really, really, really upset. It's like you're an 18-year-old punk. You've been nothing but a disappointment to your parents. And one day you wake up and you say, I'm just going to listen to my parents from this point on. How, why that happens, no one knows. And you say to your mom, what should I do? Go to school. You say, okay. You get a master's or a PhD. Then you say, okay, what should I do now? Get married. Okay. What should I do now? Well, have kids. Okay. What should I do now? Buy a house. Okay. You do everything that your mother, your parents, your society asks you. And then one day you wake up and you say, I did everything you asked of me. I still feel empty and useless. My life is meaningless. It is devoid of value. Did you lie to me? I spent 10 years going to school. I just have information. I could have Googled all that stuff. Marriage, compromise, conflict. And once every blue moon, I look at my companion and say, wow, that's really, really good. But is it worth it? Do I want to suffer 10 months to have one good day? Kids, Jesus Christ. If you're not wiping their ass, you're wiping their emotions. Then you gotta wipe their intellect. Then you gotta make sure they got some goddamn soul inside them that makes their life meaningful. It's like a never-ending job. You're like a janitor for the rest of your life, cleaning up after your family members. And you look at, and then house. Because you're stupid, you buy a house, adjustable mortgage rate. You buy a house, mortgage rate, 10%. Then it falls to 2%. Then it falls to 90%. When the hell am I going to finish paying this house off? And then God forbid, if you live in a system that plays with your life, your boss calls you to your office, oh, Deviante, I have that donut for you. You like donuts, right? Yeah. And there is coffee. And you're having a good time drinking a coffee, eating a donut. He says, by the way, I have some bad news. You're fired. But my kids, my mortgage. Yeah, buddy, that's not my problem. Go figure it out. And then you go to your mom and you say, you know, I've done everything you asked me to do because I trusted you. You're my mom. You don't want bad things for me. You want good things for me. My life sucks. And I blame you for it. And that's what Siddhartha eventually goes to the Buddha and says. But what he says is very interesting. If I remember my wife telling me, you lied to me. You told me if I hang out with you, I will become wise. I will become patient. I will become forgiving. I will have compassion, empathy for my fellow beings. I hate all of them. You lied to me because you told me I'll be my own therapist. And I'm coming to realize I need therapy. I'm in a bad place. Why did you lie to me? And he says, I know why I bought your lies. Because you seduced me. Oh, man. You fall in love with someone and you believe everything they tell you. You went all the way to Davis. You missed like 10 weeks of class. She must think you really, really love her because you really, really know her. If only she knew it's all a lie. You're just inspired to go there because you hate your philosophy class and you hate your classmates and you hate your instructor. That's the real truth. And you go to her because of what else is there to do? I mean, look at these people. They're unattractive. They don't inspire you. You spend 10, 15, 20 years with someone hoping that you'll become more insightful, and you realize you're still dumb. And you're dumb because you fell in love and because you trusted, you had faith. And now you have two people with two very, very different problems. Siddhartha believes he wasn't a good student. He was duped by love. He should have never given his faith. He should have never given his ears or time to this man. But he can't really learn. The poor Buddha. You know, you leave your wife, you leave your parents, you leave your kid, you leave your culture, you go to the forest, you fast, you pray, you meditate, and you become wise. And then you're foolish enough to think that you can give your wisdom away to other people. Once you have wisdom and insight about you, you become like a magnet. Why, how, who the hell knows? There's just something about you that other people find attractive. And Siddhartha fell. He became a paperclip, slowly gravitating towards this beautiful magnet, thinking that eventually he himself will also become a magnet. But that never happened. The Buddha comes to realize that wisdom can't be given to another. For all of his years, sitting on the stage and talking to people about how to become more wise, how to become more this, how to become more that, it's non-transferable. You can't give your wisdom to anyone. We don't really know how it works. We don't know how it's given. We don't know how it's received. We don't know how it's applied. All we know is that we're stuck between some very, very difficult places. You gravitate towards inspiration because it is beautiful. It gives you wings and you fly. And you fly because you want to be around the sun and you want to be the sun. And the person who gives you the wings, the person who forces you, helps you, encourages you to fly, assumes that there comes a point where you no longer have to be around them to fly. That wisdom can actually be given. None of it is true. None of it is true. I don't know how the book ends, but I suppose if I was the author, I would say Siddhartha comes to realize that despite all of his bowing, all of his respect, all of his fear and trembling, there is no GPS as to how you can go about in receiving wisdom and then becoming wise. It's devastating. Look at all the books that Berkeley has in the library. And look at all these foolish people who walk to the library thinking that, yes, if I read all the philosophical texts out there, religious texts out there, I will be wise. No, you won't. You'll just have a lot of information. And chances are you're going to bully people with the information that lives inside you. You know. And then you have this ridiculous man, you know, Socrates, the Buddha, Jesus, coming forth saying, I am wise, listen to me, and I'll change your life. And then in the end, you realize the people you've spent time with, they are the ones who stab you in the back. So let me end at least the response to that particular question with the story that comes from one of my friends who's dead. The story comes from Rumi, this funny character from Iran. It's a story about wisdom, transference of wisdom. It's about Jesus entering Jerusalem. And for those of you who may not know, when he enters Jerusalem, he doesn't go to Jerusalem in a Porsche or a Ferrari or a Tesla. He's riding a donkey. A donkey! He's riding an ass. And people are happy and joyous. And the question that Rumi asks is, you know, Jesus, a man in whom God lives, a container of wisdom, profound, in many ways, is sitting on the donkey. Why is it that no one worships the donkey on which the Jesus is sitting? Why?
They weren't told to.
Sure, but just because Jesus is sitting on the donkey, it doesn't make donkey transform into something different than a donkey. And he says there are people who are like donkeys, who grab dialogues of Plato. And this beautiful, profound book, seasoned with wisdom, they keep reading the book over and over and over again. And they assume that eventually they will become the next Plato. But if only they were to see themselves a little bit more clearly, they would see and realize they are nothing but a donkey. And their entire mission in life is to just carry this book, not to become the book. You ask a question because the question is writing you, sitting on you. Just because you ask the question, it doesn't mean you understand it. You just ask it. Now, whether you're inspired, whether your girlfriend asks you to ask it, doesn't really matter. But you ask it. As all of us in this class ask good questions all the time. But these are accidental. They're not your questions. Okay? You come to class, someone inspires you, then you ask. Okay? Anyways, so anything else we can talk about before we go home? We have time for 5 quickies. I know everything sounded dark and gloomy. It really isn't. You will all become wise. I have no doubt about it. That's it? You're done?
Well,
Yeah.
do you consider love and faith to be more or less the same technique or thing? To have faith in something, do you have to love it, or to have love for something, do you have to have faith in it, mind of it, or not be jaded or analytical about it?
David Hume was a Scottish philosopher around the 17th century. He wrote this beautiful book. And I don't know what the title is. I don't even know if he actually existed. At any rate, he wrote this book that made Immanuel Kant, the guy who came a couple years later. Immanuel reads the book, goes into this deep reflection for a couple of decades, and then comes out swinging, saying that Hume was wrong and this and that. So there is this analogy that David Hume has, which is you wake up in the morning, let's say it's a Monday, and you look out the window and the sun is out. Then you wake up again on Tuesday and the sun is out. Then you wake up on Wednesday, the sun is out. And every single day you wake up, the sun is out. And then a month passes by, you open your eyes, it's 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning, and the first thing you say, oh yes, the sun is out. Repetition ultimately creates this concept, this imagination, this belief that you have been exposed to the same thing over and over and over again, and you're going to trust and it's going to be there tomorrow when you wake up. Now, a couple of things happen. Now, let's just say I'm a 60-year-old man, and every morning my eyes open. I have no reason to doubt that tonight when I sleep, my eyes will open in the morning, and it'll just be another day. Now, one of the things about repetition and addiction and habituation is the following. Because I've been waking up every morning for the last 60 years, I'm going to assume that tomorrow will be another day for me. The truth is, I may not wake up in the morning, but because of my faith, and that faith has to do with the fact that the same thing has happened the last 60 years, I have no reason to doubt that it's going to happen again, which means what? I'm not going to take today seriously, and I'm going to allow you to waste my time, and I'm going to allow myself to waste other people's time, and I'm not going to give the things I'm engaged with much thought. I'm going to, in a couple of weeks, I have to turn in this long piece of junk to some department here on campus. It's important. It's about the department. It's about whether or not we can get another full-time position here. It's about me expressing to them how well we are doing as a department. But the truth is, if I know I'm going to die tomorrow, I won't care about any of it. Because this is not education. This is not a system that helps people be educated. It's money-driven. And it's got a lot of different flaws. It doesn't mean it doesn't have good things to offer. It does. So that's one of the things about repetition. it creates faith. It's going to happen again. Now, you're not going to love simply because you're going to wake up in the morning. Love is a completely different matter. So faith in some ways has to do with your experience of the past, and you project that past into the future, assuming it's going to be continuous. That's faith. If you have watched the movie Rambo, the third, I think the one that takes place in Burma, we've talked about this, no? It's about this Christian guy who says all life is sacred, and near the end of the movie he actually kills someone because his life was not sacred and valuable, so it needs to be destroyed. And that's the thing I'm trying to make, is that for the past like 40, 50 years as a Christian, you go around preaching this beautiful idea about life, about people, about equality. But the moment life touches you, a shock is applied to your system, and you do the exact opposite of what your faith demands of you. Okay? Compassion goes away, forgiveness goes away. You actually see another human being, and you categorize them as pure evil. You know, John Calvin, who was a disciple of Martin Luther, had once argued that, I mean, it's just in the Christian world, that because the image of God lives inside everyone, all of us are equal, all of us have the same value, all needs to be respected. So as long as your faith remains unchallenged, you're fine. But you don't need to love your faith. Some people can be in love with their faith. It just means, you know, you can go to the Indian restaurant and say, I want chicken tikka masala, I just want it to be really, really spicy. Now that's love. All the other people are just having a good time eating their food. You, on the other hand, you have tissues because, you know, your eyes are just watering. So love is a thing that makes your faith 1,000-fold more intense. And when that happens, you have dreams, you're restless, you're anxious. It makes you profoundly lonely, maybe sad, sometimes joyous. It's one of intoxication. And whether you're intoxicated because you drank alcohol, or because you love God, or because you love Alice in Davis, they're all the same. They just kind of make you like a lunatic, you know. When you have love, that becomes your faith. And when you love, there's a good chance that it's going to crush your faith. I mean, you may be married, and you may claim to be faithful to your companion. But when you go to Target, and you realize there is this attractive woman looking for the same thing in the same aisle, say, can you help me? My wife wears this, and she's like your size. She's not. Can you wear this for me? And she says, it's a lingerie. Yeah, I was wondering if you're a Christian, you're compassionate and forgiving enough to kind of help me out. It's my 50th anniversary. And you just melt her with your comments. No. I wish it was. I mean, it'd be very nice. You know, it'd be a nice story to tell. Again, let me tell you, I teach ethics. And so, what was that? Did you have a question? You said something. I'm sorry, it was a yawn. Yeah. And nothing, we have a minute. No one? Samuel. You had nothing the other day either, yeah. Siddhartha.
You spell it?
Yeah, Sidharta. Didi? S-I-Didi?
like Siddhartha, Siddhartha.
Yeah. I mean, if you're greedy, just add another D to it, 3Ds. Just Google it, it'll come up. And the guy's name is Hesse, H-E-S-S, two S's? Yeah. And H-E-S-S-E-E-X. Hessex. Okay, I'm sorry. I mean, you know, suffering and sarcasm are very close siblings. Okay, so have a nice day. We'll see you soon. Thank you.